Right, I'm going to be revealing my top 6 stock picks for 2022. I'm going to reveal them from number 6 to number 1, and all of these are going to have something in common. I looked at their performance and growth, the moat of the company, so their, competitive advantage, and the future of the company. What's, down the pipeline. And so all these 3 things I think are very important to consider when you're looking at stocks. And so let's get started with number 6. That is going to be Vici. Now, Vici, if we look at their stock chart, we're going to start with that. Over the last, we're going to do year to date on all of these stock charts just to compare, make it very similar. But they have grown 18.84%. And that is very good if you bought at the beginning of the year. But I think I mentioned in a prior video, a lot of people probably bought towards the peak. That's when it started to get real popular. And so I think a lot of people are in the red on Vici, but I think in a few years, you're going to look back and you're going to see below 30 as something that's in the rearview mirror and probably not going to, be obtained in the future. So buying now, I think, is still very key and important with this stock. Now, if we look at their growth, they have had very strong revenue growth in the trailing 12 months of 36.2%, and their free cash flow is very strong. I think that's what you get with this company, and you'll see similar with all the companies I choose in this video, is they have very good, strong cash flows. And that's very important for a company like this that pays a very good, healthy, 5% dividend. And so that's their growth. I think it's very strong. They're going to be having that big acquisition with MGM Growth Properties, and their performance, I think, is just going to surprise us all, and it's going to be very healthy over the next 5 to 10 years. And so let's talk about their moat. Now, a lot of people think they're just concentrated in casinos and the Vegas Strip, which, if you think of it in that light, yes, they are. But if you think outside of the box, I think they have a really strong moat here because this is an experiential REIT and they have unique properties like Caesar's Palace and other well-known casinos that can't just be built somewhere else and be successful. Vegas has developed over decades and decades, and it's growing massively. And so I think what you're getting here is a stock that the moat really is the attraction of its properties. And I think that's something that is not easily replicated. And it's one of the top stocks out there, maybe other than Disney, that you can't really replicate. And so I think that's where their moat is strong, is that they have that hold on the experiential part of it. And with Vegas, I think that's one of the top destinations, entertainment destinations in the world, and will remain that way probably the rest of my life. And so I think their moat is very strong in that aspect. Now, if we talk about their future, of course, the MGM growth, they're making other acquisitions like that, and they're just going to keep on dominating the Vegas Strip as well as expanding nationwide. And in a recent video, the CEO did even mention the word global. So I think that's very exciting. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see some really awesome acquisitions as well. And so I think this is a stock where you buckle your seatbelt. You don't pay attention to the dips. Of course, the pandemic has hit it a little bit here and there because it put fear in people, but all their properties paid 100% of rent on time in cash during the whole pandemic. That just shows the quality and strength of Vegas and these properties that Vici has. And so I think their future is very bright. I think they have a lot of, growth potential. If we look at their price, their stock price target with Vici, right now they're about $29 and they have an average of 35 with a high of 39. I think they will get to that 35 next year easily. And especially if the pandemic just keeps on easing and easing, these new variants are getting less, potent. And so I think with the direction that Vici is going, I think 35 is easily achievable. And then before we move on to the next one, I'm going to end each stock with how does this affect my world, right? How do I see the stock in my world? Because I think that's important, right? Because it's easy for stocks companies to talk the talk, but can they show and walk the walk? So with Vici, Vegas is very popular, and on all my social media outlets that I use, there are many people traveling to Vegas, visiting Vegas. And that is something that has never slowed down. Even during the pandemic, people were going to Vegas. And so in the real world, I see family and friends going to Vegas, and that's something that a lot of them do on a yearly basis. It's just a very attractive place to go because it's more than just casinos, and especially with Vici, their casinos have convention centers, restaurants, shows, lot more to do with it than just the casino part of it. So I think Vegas is very strong. This Vici REIT is a very awesome one to own if you're bullish on Vegas. And so that's my number six pick. Now let's move into number five, and that is going to be another experiential type stock, and that's going to be Disney. Yes, Disney. I think if we look at their stock chart real quick, Disney is one that, the pandemic has not been as nice to Disney. And you'll see here that they are down, 12.67% year to date. But that's mainly because this pandemic has forced them to shut down their theme parks, which is a huge part of their business. And I think what that's done for us is create a buying opportunity right now. And I'm seriously considering buying this. I own Vici, I don't own Disney, but I do want to. With their growth, like I said, Disney has had some struggles, but their revenue quarter over quarter has improved, and their cash flows of the trailing 12 months has improved. So their revenue, their cash is improving, and that's what I like to see because it makes sense that the pandemic hit them hard, but now it's great to see that they're recovering well. And so let's hope that that keeps on going, and I have very strong, intuition that it will. And so with Disney, they have, with their moat, it's similar to Vici. They have that, experiential thing going on. They're unique, one of a kind, one of the most well-known companies in the world of all time. And with Disney, they have made very iconic acquisitions of different franchises. And so you look at some of the big ones like Pixar, Lucasfilms, Marvel, ESPN. I mean, that is just amazing. That's something that is very valuable and can't really be replicated, and neither can their theme parks. And so that's with their moat, I just see something that they have these very unique assets that can't be replicated, and that's where their moat is very strong. I mean, they're just so iconic of a brand that, it would take a lot to bring this company down, and I just don't see that happening. And so with their future, I think it's key that they expand Disney Plus. I think it will expand, but I think it's very important that they kind of go outside of this children, streaming view to kind of trying to incorporate more adults to using their streaming. That's what will have them grow huge in the streaming portion if they can do that. And then, of course, their theme parks remain strong, very popular. I think those will just continue to expand and remain very popular. And just being an iconic brand in general, they have a lot to leverage there. And so I think their future looks bright. Now, if we look at their price target, Disney, they have right now they're at about in the low 150s. Their average is near 200 with a high of 220. I think they will hit over 200 next year. I think there's a good chance that they will reach that 200 price target per share, which is an added $50 per share from right now. And I just think with this pandemic, once it eases, the stock will really take off. Now, how does this, affect my everyday life? Well, just like Vici, with Disney, again, a lot of family and friends on social media post their trips to Disney. Now, I would say their next rival is Universal Studios. For every one Universal Studio post I see about five Disney. And so Disney is still the top pick when it comes to theme parks. And I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. And they just are going to keep dominating that area. And so I see Disney everywhere. I have Disney Plus. My brother with his kids have Disney Plus. So I do see this company, and there's movies that are coming out with Disney that are actually really awesome. I've seen a lot of them, taking my niece and nephew. So Disney is still very strong in my everyday life, and I think that is key to see that they're still, very much integrated into our lives. And so that's why Disney is my number five pick. Number four is going to be Apple. Now, Apple, if we look at their stock chart, they have, had very, very good performance year to date. They have, 38.58% growth in their stock. That is amazing. That's impressive. And I don't own Apple. I wish I bought into it earlier. That's a mistake on my part, but I own up to that. And if we look at Apple's growth, I mean, all I can say is their revenue is very strong, their cash flow is amazing, and they just became triple A. They just got a triple A credit rating. They're one of only three companies to do so in the stock market. The other is Johnson and Johnson and Microsoft. And so that's amazing. That's a huge, huge positive for Apple. And when it comes to their moat, I think their moat is always underestimated. I think they have a huge moat, and it's mainly because of their phone, their watch, and their AirPods. I see so many users of those, and within those, you have, the health and fitness within their products. You have, their Apple TV. You have future Apple Car possibly. All their things integrate with each other, and that is what creates a strong moat for them. I think that their products are very sticky. So, speaking of their future, why I think and believe they have a very strong future is they have a loyal and dedicated customer following. People line up to get their products every year when the phone comes out, has no problem selling. And, they just are growing in their subscription-based services, which is key and important for companies to grow, especially if they can be dominant in that. And Apple was doing that. So I think that their future remains strong. I think they're still in high demand and they will be for the foreseeable future. I don't know if that will ever end. So if we look at their price target, now Apple has some downside. They have a low of 128, but right now they're about, the mid 170s, and they have an average of 175, a high of 210. I think analysts get this stock wrong and have for a while. I think this stock, even though it's at a $3 trillion valuation, the biggest valuation of any company, I don't think that's something you should focus on. I think you should focus on how sticky their business is and how loyal their customers are and how everything's integrated and it just creates more and more business as more and more subscriptions are being bought. And so if I look in my everyday life, Apple's probably one of those companies I see the most. So most people I know have an Apple iPhone. Most people I know have the Apple Watch. Most people I know have the Apple earphones, AirPods. And, you know, it's just something that I think will not change because I own Apple products. I love them. They're so easy to use, and I will continue buying them unless there's something big changes. And I think with Apple, they are obviously only going to try to improve. And so I think they're going to remain at the top. And I don't like when people look at, stock prices being too high or valuations, because if you just focus on that, you're going to miss out on a whole lot because you got to look at the whole picture. Apple will most likely, 99% certain, will be here the rest of my life and will only grow bigger and bigger. And so I'm very happy, putting this at the number 4 stock pick for 2022. And I don't own it, but I would love to get in there if there's a buying opportunity. Now, the only risk I see is if one of their main products doesn't sell as expected, then you might see a price drop, and I think that's when you get in. So number 4 is Apple. Now, my number 3 pick might be a little controversial, but that's going to be Meta. That's previously Facebook. Now, if we look at their stock chart, Facebook, they've grown impressively as well, about 29%. Of course, they've been hounded by a lot of social things, shall we say, with government and stuff, which has, I think, put a lot of pressure on their stock. But if we look at their growth, Facebook, their revenue is very strong and their free cash flow is just also a beast. And so when it comes to their growth, they have the cash flow to do what they're doing and they have the growth to prove that it's working. If we, talk about their moat, I think they have one of the biggest moats out there because they have such a huge user base. They have 2.89 billion, yes, billion active users. And outside of that, they're going into the metaverse, which we're going to talk about on the future part. But just speaking of their moat, how many Oculuses have you seen bought there on social media? I mean, it's impressive. Their moat is very strong. Having that many users just is the opportunity for them, right? They can really leverage that to their advantage. And so with their future, again, having that many users, you just have opportunities galore. But I'd like to just focus on their focus on the metaverse. And the metaverse is something that I think Facebook will be one of the top players in. And right now, their Oculuses are selling like crazy. And I see them everywhere on TikTok and Facebook and Snap, all my social media feeds. It's one of the most popular technology gifts this year, and it just allows Facebook to introduce its users to the possibilities of the metaverse. And I think this is so key and just very exciting as an owner of Facebook. I do own Meta Facebook. Facebook to me is still popular and it's still, something that everyone uses, even though the younger generation might not be using it as much. They still go back to it and check it because that's where everybody is. But if not, they have Instagram. They own Instagram, which is more popular with the younger generations. So that's awesome. And then, I see Facebook all around me. So before we get to that, let's look at their price target. Facebook is a little bit more all over the place, but they have a low of 250. They're about 340 right now, and they have a high of 460. So I think they're pricing in volatility here, but I really think this company over the next couple of years is going to show how it was right with the metaverse. And just outside of that, they have such a huge user base that they really have a lot of opportunity that they can leverage. So I really do see this stock heading easily towards that 400 per share this next year. Now, how does this affect my everyday life? Well, uh, I use Facebook almost every day. I get on there. All my friends and family use Facebook, and a lot of people I know have bought Oculuses for their kids, and they're using them themselves and enjoying it. So I see Facebook usage everywhere. They're the biggest social media network worldwide, and they also own 91 companies. So I think Facebook is just a beast of a stock for the future, especially if the metaverse really is super successful for them, which I think it will be. And so that's my number three pick for next year, and I'd love to keep buying more stock. I do own some. So number two is going to be good old Google, and I'm going to talk mainly about their Class C shares. So really, it's Alphabet, and the ticker symbol is GOOG. They have Class A, Class B, Class C. You can look up the differences, but I'm focusing on the Class C stock. All of it's virtually the same. It's just each one has different, like one has voting rights, one doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. But Google, number two stock pick. Now, if we look at their stock chart, it is very, very impressive. Their stock has grown over 69%. That is massive, and I don't own Google directly. I own it through an ETF, but I wish I would have bought a year ago because that's amazing. You would have made over $1,100 just on one share. So if we continue on with their growth, Google, they have, I mean, their growth is just stellar. Their revenue growth is stellar. Their free cash flow is amazing. So Google is a beast when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to Google's moat, I think they have a huge moat, right? They're one of the biggest, or if they are the biggest advertising company in the world. Their services, YouTube, hello, we're all watching that right now, and Google Maps, which I use almost every time I go out driving somewhere where I'm not familiar with it. So I think their moat is huge. They have a lot of users across all these different lines. But let's talk about their future, which is what I want to focus on because over the last 17 years since they've gone public, their stock has grown 5,000%. Obviously, this year it went up 69%. Many people are saying this company can't possibly grow more. But remember, if you only focus on that, I think you're missing the big picture. And they have the planet's largest search engine. They control about a quarter of the advertising market. And that means they can just really take advantage of setting prices that people will pay. Plus, their cloud business has brought in 18 billion annually of revenue. 18 billion, that's huge. And their cloud business is growing at a 54% annual rate. So this company has a lot of big things going for it, and if you think it's going to slow down, I think you're kidding yourself. Um, and so I think their future is very bright, and I think they're a great buy this next year, regardless of what they've gone up in 2021. So let's look at their price targets. So Google is one that, it's right now at about 2,900, right about, you know, at their low that is on this price target, but they have an average target of 3,300, 3,350, and a high of almost 4,000. I think this company will hit that medium and the average easily. this year and kind of creep above that, closer to that $4,000 high price target. I just think this company, people again like to focus on, oh, it's expensive, it's grown so much, but if you look at historically stocks like that, each year, you would have just bit the bullet and bought a quality stock like this, you'd have been grateful over the next 5, 10 years. So, I think this company is huge and has huge future, huge growth. And how it affects my world right now is I see YouTube everywhere. We're using it right now. I love watching YouTube videos. I think it's a great medium for people to get their messages out. Uh, Tons of people use Chrome. I use Chrome. Google Maps, I use a lot, and I know a lot of people that do. So Google is everywhere in my life, every day pretty much. So that's my number two pick. Now, number one, drum roll, is going to be Microsoft. Now, when I put all these companies into consideration, Microsoft was the highest on average when I put everything in. And so let's talk about Microsoft. Now, I own Microsoft. It's one of my biggest stock holdings, and I'm glad that I own this company. If we look at Microsoft's year-to-date chart, they have grown an impressive 56.74%. I am very happy with the performance of this stock. And if we look at their growth is, it's epic. I mean, they have strong revenue growth. They have epic free cash flow. Look at the comparison between the average, which is the second column. I mean, 60.42 billion versus an average of 28.95 billion. I mean, they're in the top 100th percentile for a reason, right? They're just a cash flow machine. Mind you, they are one of the three companies that are AAA credit rating. So they are very respected out there and very well looked at. And so when we talk about Microsoft's moat, it's expansive. They have expansive and integrated user base. And if we look at the numbers, Microsoft 365 has 54 million subscribers. Teams has 250 million active monthly users. LinkedIn has 800 million members, and Windows 10 had 1.3 billion monthly active devices. And I think this all adds up to the cash flow that it's generating because these are all subscription based. Most of these are, and that's where Microsoft really shines for me is they are a subscription based, king. They really know how to deliver and keep people subscribed because their products are very good. And, as far as their future, I think their growth is really going to come in with their cloud business. Now, they have 20%, 21% of the market, where Amazon has 32, but they're closing that gap. So their cloud infrastructure market is growing. Um, and I think all their areas are growing in Microsoft, and that's why I chose them as number one. So their cloud-based Azure is growing. Um, they are in the metaverse, guys. They are partnering up with Facebook in this, which is very smart because Facebook has a huge customer base, right? Which we just talked about. And the metaverse for Microsoft is more in the Office Teams environment, where Facebook is outside of that. So together they are creating a powerhouse. So I think they will be a big player in the metaverse. And they own over 225 companies. So they have a lot to leverage there. So I think this company just is going to be very strong for the rest of my life. They have, great history, great growth, and great future prospects. And I think they have a big moat. I see Windows everywhere, right? So before we get to that, let's look at their stock price target. Um, so if we look at that, they are right now about 340, I'll say. They have an average of 370 and then a high of 440. I think next year this company will go close, about 400 easily share. And I think Microsoft is on its way to become the next $3 trillion company behind Apple. And I think that's because they're of such high quality and they have such a big moat. Their subscription-based services are just growing, their cloud, I mean, all of that stuff. Plus, you know, with LinkedIn, to me, LinkedIn is the new business card, right? Instead, when you go to, you know, corporate related sponsored events, it's no longer here's my business card. It's add me to LinkedIn. Here's my LinkedIn information. That is the new business card, if you think of it in that aspect. So How does this affect my world? Well, Windows is everywhere. It's widely used by companies. Teams is widely used. We use Teams every day in my group when it comes to the work days. And LinkedIn, everyone has a LinkedIn, right? If you're in the business world, you have a LinkedIn, especially if you want to expand your success and opportunities. And it's used everywhere. So Microsoft for me is just a beast of a company. I think this is one that I will always hold and always add on to no matter what the price is because I think long term this company will just soar, and I'll look back and be very glad that I started a position when I did a couple years ago and keeping on adding to it regularly. So these are my top 6 stock picks. I'd love to hear if you agree with these, if you disagree, if you change anything around with the rating here. I'm very excited a year from now to look back on this video to compare and see how I did. But sometimes it's not about picking those speculative companies for the high growth. It's these established quality companies that keep delivering year over year, and they do so for a reason, as we explained today. So let's see what 2022 brings. I hope you guys, my next video won't be out till next year in the new year. I'm going to go over my performance of my portfolio, my dividends, and all of that. So hope you guys have a happy New Year's, and thank you guys for everything you do. Watching my videos, viewing them, subscribing. It's free. It's always good to get another opinion. So have a great day. We'll see you in the new year.